Hello everyone, in this video I am going to talk about the 3 starter dragons you get when starting Puzzle & Dragons for the first time, and which ones to choose. Like most RPG games, when you start Puzzle & Dragons, you get to choose between 3 dragons with different elements: fire, water and wood. The fire dragon is Tyra, the water dragon is PaD, and the wood dragon is Fracky. Let's talk about each of them briefly. Tyra is a red dragon which evolves into Tyran, Tyrannos, Fire Dragon Tyrannos, and ultimately Fire Dragon Grand Tyrannos. Tyra and Tyrannos has the same skill called Heat Breath, which inflicts fire damage of ×3 of its current attack to all enemy monsters, and the same leader skill called Firepower, which increases your fire monster's attack by ×1.5. Once you evolve him into Tyrannos, his skill changes to a skill called Magma Breath, which increases fire monster's attack by ×1.3 for 2 turns and inflicts fire damage of ×20 of its current attack to all enemy monsters. Once you evolve him to Fire Dragon Tyrannos, his leader skill gets better to increasing damage of your fire monsters by ×2, and lastly, once you ultimate evolve him, your fire monster's attack and RCV will increase by ×2. PaD is a water dragon which evolves into Plesios, Ice Dragon Plesios, and ultimately Ice Dragon Death Plesios. PaD's skill and leader skill is exactly the same as Tyra's skill and leader skill, except that it will inflict water damage to the enemy monsters, and your water monster's attack and RCV will increase instead of your fire monsters. Fracky is a wood dragon which evolves into Brachios, Fire Dragon Brachios, and ultimately Fire Dragon Gaia Brachios. Again, his leader skill and skill is basically the same as Tyra and PaD, except that it will inflict wood damage to the enemy monsters and your wood monster's attack and RCB will increase. Now, since the 3 monster stats, skill and leader skills are all similar and they all follow the same evolution pattern, it is difficult for beginners to decide on who to choose. Although it depends on which monster you were able to get on your free reg machine roll after the tutorial, I'm not going to consider that as there's too many monsters you can possibly get out from the rare egg machine. Some people say that in the end it's personal preference of which monster you think looks the cutest or the coolest. However, since this video is targeting at non-IAB beginner players who are completely new to Puzzle & Dragons, I'm going to answer who I personally think is the best starting dragon. The important thing to remember is that you will be using one of the 3 starter dragons as your leader for a while, therefore you want to create a monocolor team as fast as possible, which means your team monster are all the same colour. This is so that all your monsters in the team gets affected by your starter dragon's leader skill. When creating your first team, you'll be relying heavily on monsters being dropped from the first few normal dragons you clear. Now, there's a couple of monsters that possibly drop from these starting dungeons, but there's only a few useful monsters that actually regularly drop, which you want to include in your team. When looking at the starting normal dragons up to the Tower of Trials, the only good monsters you can put on your team are the Goblins. There are 3 Goblins: the Red Goblin, which is a fire type, the Blue Goblin, which is a water type, and a Goblin, which is a wood type. When they first drop, they have no skill, but once you evolve them into Samurai Goblin, Marine Goblin, and Hobgoblin, they all receive different skills. Hobgoblin, which is the green goblin, or the wood goblin, has a skill called Orb Refresh, which basically reshuffles all your orbs. When you have leaders, such as Sakuya, which requires you to have specific orbs in order for her leader skill to activate, this skill is quite useful at times. However, it's not useful at the beginning of the game. Marine Goblin, which is the water goblin, has a skill called Guard Stance Water, which turns fire orbs into heart orbs. This skill is actually useful when you're in desperate need to heal, or when you have monsters with Attack Stance Water, which turns heart orbs into water orbs. So basically, you'll have this combo skill which changes fire orbs to heart orbs, and then the heart orbs to water orbs. However, getting a monster with Attack Stance Water early on in the game is really difficult, so Marine Goblin's skill is a bit too defensive early on in the game. Lastly, Samurai Goblin's skill is Attack Stance Fire, which changes heart orbs into fire orbs. Now, since you are creating a monocolor team, for example fire, if you're choosing Tyra, you're going to be needing a lot of fire orbs. Attack Stance Fire is a really strong skill to have early on in the game, as you get those fire orbs that you really need. Attack stances are used in mid games and in late games dungeons too, so it's a good idea to have a monster with attack stance early on in the game. Although this is not too much of a game-breaking difference, and I won't say that it's wrong to choose Pressy or Brecky, I personally believe that for the reason of being able to get a Dark Stance fire really early on in the game from the Samurai Goblin, as early as day 1, my preference when choosing one of the 3 starter dragons will be Tyra. In my next video, I will be discussing which monsters you should get which drops in starter normal dungeons early on in the game so that you can progress Puzzle and Dragons more smoothly. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.